They'll be out there for about 5 to 10 minutes, roughly, hunting until they found all of the eggs that can be found, perhaps in the whole of Cwmbran, but there we go. So Hannah has just been sharing about the big change that the resurrection, that Jesus coming back to life brings, particularly about how sadness is turned into joy in the story. They're sad because Jesus has died, but now they're happy because Jesus is alive again, and all that represents. And we're going to think a little bit now about how it's not just sadness turned to joy, but it's also promises turned into reality. That's one of the big changes that the resurrection brings. Promises are now reality. We like our promises to become reality, don't we? Like if you've got a friend who promises you that we will meet up, we'll eventually get round to meeting up, and then eventually you go out for that meal together or whatever it is, it brings you a lot of happiness to know that the promise has now reached reality. Or maybe you've been promised in work a raise, and eventually when that raise comes, you're so happy, aren't you? Or the children promise that they will tidy their bedroom, and actually that never becomes reality, does it? So forget that one. But Jesus gave many promises that not only would he die, but that he would also come back to life again. Here's one on the screen. This is taken from Matthew's gospel account, Matthew's book about Jesus' life. In Matthew chapter 16, verse 21, he says, "From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, that he must be killed and on the third day raised to life." So this was obviously before the event. Jesus promised on at least 3 times in the same kind of way. So in Matthew chapter 17 and also in chapter 20, he says similar things, that he will suffer, die, and come back to life again. But he also said about this in picture language as well. So he spoke about the story of Jonah being inside the giant fish for 3 days and nights, and how the same thing would happen to him, that he would be, like Jonah was in the belly of the fish, he would be in the belly of the earth for 3 days, and then he would come out again. He spoke standing next to the temple, saying, "If this temple is destroyed, I will raise it up again in 3 days." But he wasn't talking about the physical building, he was talking about himself. And then on another occasion, he said, if a single seed remains as it is, then it's just a seed. But if it's sown into the ground, it's changed, it's transformed. What he was saying was, and you who are gardeners will know that it's time to be sowing some of your seeds, get your marigolds in and your poppies at this time of year. Great time to do that. I'm pretending I know what I'm talking about. You sow your seeds in the ground, and your seed, it looks like nothing, doesn't it? It looks like a little nothing, and you put it in the ground, much like how you bury a dead body. Now, don't think about that every time you're gardening, because it will make your gardening miserable. But you're sowing it in the ground, much like you put a dead body in the ground, as many bodies are buried. So you bury it in the ground, and then you know that once you've put that seed in the ground, give it a little bit of time, and that seed is going to grow. There's going to be life from that seed. So because this thing that looked like nothing, looks quite frankly dead, you put it in the ground as if it were dead, eventually it's going to grow into this plant. And from this plant, from this, say, poppy that grows, usually what happens is the poppy has loads of seeds on it. By the end of the season, there are loads more seeds than when you first started. And Jesus is saying that that's what it's going to be like with him. He's going to be buried in the tomb for 3 days, but then he's going to come back to life. That plant will grow, and that will produce many more seeds. Now, what he means is that not only will he come back to life, but that he will bring life for many more people. And that's the offer he has made since that time when he did come back to life again. It was roughly 2,000 years ago that the resurrection happened. And when Jesus did come back to life, since that time, the offer has been made that anyone who comes and believes in Jesus can have this new life that Jesus himself has. Eternal life that goes on forever. You see, by him dying, he paid for our sin. He took away the brokenness that is within us all. And it's because of that brokenness that we face death and we face eternity being in that condition. But Jesus offers us a life that will go on forever and a life that can be lived with God. That's the life that he offers. That's the multitude of seeds that he offers to anyone who will believe in him. So those were some of the occasions when Jesus explained the promise in advance that not only would he die, but that he would also come back to life again, and that could mean life for any who will believe in him. But you know who didn't get that? It was his closest followers. By the time of the resurrection, there were 11 of them, initially 12. One had deserted Jesus, betrayed him, Judas. And now there were 11 who had spent those 3 or so years with him every single day of their lives. They heard everything he said. They heard these many times that he said that he would die and rise again. But they still didn't get it. Do you know who did get it? His enemies. Those that were against Jesus, they remembered him saying these things. And so as soon as he died, they went to Pilate and said, "Can we make sure the tomb is guarded?" And Pilate gave the instructions, "Fine, go ahead." They sealed the tomb and they put a guard of soldiers, which was at least 16 soldiers there guarding the tomb day and night, because they had remembered that Jesus claimed he would not only die but rise again. So they wanted to make sure his body was kept there. But then on the Sunday morning, the angels appeared, the earthquake happened, the guards fell on the floor as though dead because they had fainted in fear, and the stone was rolled back by the angels, and Jesus was alive again. But as I said, the 11 followers of Jesus, they didn't get it. They were hiding away in a room, a locked door, away from everything else going on because they were scared. And yet when they saw the empty tomb, when they heard the account of the first group of people, the women that had gone to the body first thing in the morning only to discover that Jesus wasn't there because he was alive, and one of them saw Jesus alive, Mary. When they heard these accounts, when they saw the empty tomb, and when they saw for themselves that Jesus was alive, when he appeared to them as well, they had to believe then. They realized that these promises that Jesus had made were real. They really had come true. They accepted them. They believed these promises. They believed in the reality that Jesus was alive. And the offer is there for all of us today. That seed that we can share in is on offer for us today. Just as those 11 believed that Jesus really had risen from the dead, the offer is for us to believe and have life in Jesus. One last thing. How do we know the disciples weren't just making it up, the close followers of Jesus? How do we know they weren't just making it up? Well, because for the rest of their lives, they said that this was real and true. Now, anyone can do that, can't they? Anyone can make something up and go on saying that that lie is true. Let me let you in on the biggest lie I ever told. I once told my parents and my family and my church growing up that I had fallen asleep up a tree. I had run away, not run away, but I had gone into hiding because I'd had a falling out, climbed a tree, and hidden up in the tree. And then the police turned up because they couldn't find me. And so I had to come up with this excuse for why I was hiding and hadn't heard them all shouting for me for about an hour or so until the police turned up. So I climbed down the tree and walked over to them, yawning, stretching, just had a lovely nap up a tree. And they believed me. They believed me for many years, for 5 years. So anyone can make up a lie and for that to go on. Yes, I did eventually reveal to it in my adulthood that I had made this lie up. I came clean. But anyone can make a lie and carry on saying that lie for the rest of their lives. So how do we know that these 11 close followers of Jesus hadn't just made it up? Well, one thing I find compelling, there's lots of reasons, but one thing I find compelling is that all 11 of them had to suffer for what they said was true. No one suffers for what they say is true. No one dies for what they say is true if they know it is a lie. And many of the close followers of Jesus died still saying that they had seen Jesus come back to life again. I find that quite compelling, that it is real, that the promise had become reality. And if it is a reality, it's there for us to believe into.
On the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together with the doors locked of fear for the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. Now Thomas, also known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks on his hands, and put my finger where the nails were, and put my hand onto his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it onto my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen me and yet have believed."
Great, thank you, Millie. So in this day that changed everything, we've seen sadness being turned into joy. We've seen promises being turned into reality. And lastly, we're going to see doubts being turned into belief. And before we get into that a little bit more, I've got a little bit of a game for you. So this is the false or true game. All you have to do is decide whether what I'm telling you is false or true. And as the adults have heard, I'm very good at lying. So watch yourselves on this one. So the first statement that I'm claiming is true is that the longest human neck is 7.7 inches long. That's about that long, roughly. No? I don't know. What's 7.7 inches? Roughly that, I think. So 7.7 inches long. Should we do it by a clapometer? Let's do a clapometer. So if you think this is true, clap now. If you think this is false, clap now. I think the true people are the most numerous in the room, and the true people are correct. This is indeed true. That's the longest human neck. The next statement is that Greenland sharks can live up to 500 years. Is there a shark that can live 500 years? If you think it is true, clap now. We only need a quick clap. No one's getting applauded here. If you think it is false, clap now. I think there are more falses in the room, and you are wrong. It is in fact true that there are Greenland sharks who live in the North Pole under the ice who can live up to 500 years. The next one. There is a vault, a room, a locked room on a Norwegian island containing every known seed. Is this something that is true or false? There's a room, a locked room on a Norwegian island containing every known seed. If you think it's true, clap now. If you think it's false, clap now. There we go. There are more truths, and this one is in fact true. The island is Svalbard or something like that. It's in the very north, and they're saving them just in case all of the seeds get wiped out. There we are. So we need to go to Norway if the apocalypse starts to happen. Next one, the world's largest pizza was over 1 mile long. Is this true or is this false? The world's largest pizza was over 1 mile long. Clap if you think it's true. Clap if you think it's false. That's almost even, but slightly more on the false. But this one is, in fact, true, that's the world's largest pizza 1 mile long. There we go. Now, Jesus came back to life again on the Sunday morning. But that evening, many of the disciples, many of those close followers of Jesus, 10 of them, were in this locked room, this upper room, and Jesus appeared to them. Jesus came to them that Sunday evening, the same morning on which he had risen. That evening, he appeared to them in the room. Except there was one of them that was missing. His name was Thomas. He had that strange nickname that we saw in the reading, Didymus. But who knows what Thomas was doing? Maybe he was out getting supplies. Maybe he was visiting relatives. Who knows what Thomas was doing? But for one reason, he wasn't there in that room. So the last thing Thomas knew was that Jesus was dead. He had died on the Friday, and he knew that much was true. Jesus was dead. He also knew that there were some people who were claiming that the tomb was empty. He had probably heard Mary saying that she had seen Jesus, but he didn't believe it. And when those other 10 close disciples, those close followers of Jesus, when they said, "We have seen Jesus because he appeared to us in this room," they didn't believe, he didn't believe them either. So the 10 of them had seen Jesus, they believed, but Thomas refused to believe. He said, "Unless I see the scars in his hands where the nails went through and where the spear pierced his side, unless I see them and touch them, I will not believe." So Thomas was one who doubted. But then a week later, it's Sunday evening again, and Jesus appears in that locked room once more. And Thomas is there that time. So all 11 of them are in that room, in that locked room, and Jesus appears to them. And Jesus says to Thomas, "You can come and touch my hands. You can put your fist in my side where the spear pierced my side. You can come and touch my hands and my side, and you can believe that I really am alive again." Now, what do you think Thomas would do? Would he carry on doubting? Well, of course not. Jesus is right there in front of him. In fact, it doesn't even tell us that Thomas touched the scars on his hands and in his side. He didn't even need to do that probably, because he saw Jesus right there. He stopped doubting and he believed. Now, as we've been hearing about the resurrection of Jesus, that Jesus came back to life again on the third day, and that this confirms that he had died for our sins and that he brings us new life if we believe in him, I wonder whether you are a bit like Thomas. Are you someone who struggles to believe something, who finds it hard to believe what you have been told about? Well, the reason the account of Thomas is there in the gospel writings is so that we will believe, especially if we are those who are likely to doubt what we are told. You see, the gospel accounts, they've been written as eyewitness accounts. Matthew was in the room. John, who we've been reading from, He was in the room when these events happened. So these events are recorded as eyewitness accounts that Jesus really has come back to life again. And so they've been written so that we can read them and so that we can know for ourselves that these events really happened. So that we can go from being people who doubt to people who believe. Did you notice how all of the facts I put before you were true? Because sometimes even what is true is hard to believe. But sometimes what is hard to believe really is true. And so these gospel accounts have been written so that we can read them and become convinced that Jesus really did come back to life again. And if he really did come back to life again, then we can know by believing in Jesus that our sins have been forgiven. That all that we've done that is wrong and the way that we've rejected God and left him out of our lives, that it can all be forgiven. Everything we've done that is wrong can be forgiven. And we can know for sure that we have a new life, that we live with God. We can actually know him. We can live in this loving relationship with him. We can flourish as we're designed to flourish as human beings because we have life in Jesus. And that's a life that goes on even beyond death into eternity. Isn't that worth having? So, are you one who doubts? Well, look at what the gospel writers said. Look at what the eyewitnesses says. Look at how they were in the room when Jesus was alive again. Take their accounts and accept them and put your faith in Jesus. And when you do, you can have this life with God through forgiveness, life that goes on forever. If you still want some more help in knowing the truth of the gospel accounts, well, why don't you read one of the gospel accounts? You can get the Bible for free online. You can access it for free. You can get it on apps on your phone. And if you want some help, some guidance of where you can get those, I'll happily show you afterwards. We also have these short gospel accounts. These are parts of the Bible that are the eyewitness accounts of Jesus' life. This one is John's gospel that we have been reading from. You'll find a few of these scattered around the building. There are a couple in the entrance hall. There are a couple down here. You're welcome to take one of those with you free of charge. You can have one of those, read it, and find out about the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. There are also some other books down there that you're welcome to browse and read. Some of them you can take home for free as well. But one last thing I want to offer to you, and that's this book, Life That Lasts. There are a few of these, again, scattered in the entrance hall, on the tables in the hall behind me. You're welcome to take home with you one of these short booklets that just explains about the life of Jesus and the significance of who he was and how we can have that life with God that lasts forever.